The way you can explain that you're thinking and your decision making in a way that's logical is something that helps you to be successful. If you want to at least fly for a major, get your class 1 done. That gives you your first indication this is a possibility.
Most pilots don't understand what career opportunities are available in the world of aviation. They're making career decisions based on advice from friends or posts on internet forums, meaning they are taking huge risks with their livelihood without having all the details. This podcast was created to help you understand the aviation industry so you can find your dream job. Let's get ready for Pushback. Here's your host and my dad, Nick Fialka.
Hey, pilot, welcome back to Ready for Pushback. It's me, Nick Fialka. You found it. You're here. We're here. I'm here. Let's go. Today, we're all about second chances. We're all about what to do if you've already had a career and now you're moving on to the next thing. And I talked to a friend of mine named Jim Maune, who lives out in sunny California, and we go down the path of his story about switching into the aviation business after a really successful career as a lawyer. Super interesting cat. I think you're going to really enjoy it. If you haven't already told somebody about my show, please do. You know I'm trying to triple that listenership this year, and the only way I can do that is for you guys to keep telling your buddies all about Ready for Pushback. I appreciate you if you're on the podcast world. I appreciate you if you are on the Instagram world or the YouTube world or the whatever socials you guys are on. Thank you for listening to my show. Thanks for being part of the team. So sit back, relax. Let's get ready for Pushback. Hey, pilot, did you just get a new conditional job offer? Are you getting out of the military and going to move your family across the country? Are you going to move in base somewhere, or are you going to go out to find that second home that you've been looking for? Well, I want you to stop right now, pick up the phone, and call Marty and the team at Trident Home Loans. It's an organization that's run by pilots. They understand pilot pay. They understand contracts. They understand military. They have the best VA loans in the United States. Marty and his team have been doing mortgages for years. They've been doing my mortgages for years. I trust him and his team more than any other organization. I challenge you to get a better deal anywhere else. Go ahead, reach out, get a mortgage quote, and then call Marty and his team. They will walk you through the process and show you how competitive their rates are. So go right now, tridenthomeloans.com, and check them out. All right, Jim Maune is joining me today from sunny San Diego, California. What's up, man? How are you?
Hey, not much. It's great. I'm living on Cloud 9.
You're living on Cloud 9. Everybody in San Diego lives on Cloud 9. I just think that's normal.
Yeah, it's a great place to live. And after traveling around the country in the military, you find one place that you love. And thankfully and luckily, I've been able to establish roots here.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. So you reached out to me. We've been chatting for a while, and I love your story. And that's why I wanted to have you on the show. It's taken a long time. It's a long path to kind of get to where you're going. I think that your story will really resonate with the pilot who has kind of gone away or thinking about that second career or all the pluses and minuses and the fear that comes along with it. So kind of give me a picture of where you started and where you've been for the past 10 years or so.
Yeah, sounds great. I've been a practicing attorney for the last 10 years.
What kind of attorney are you?
So I'm a patent attorney, so I help inventors protect their inventions. So I work for big clients, Apple, Oracle, Disney, Lucasfilm, a lot of work that goes in to communicate with inventors, get their ideas, capture them, send it off to the patent office. 2 years later, the patent office will call you back and you negotiate. It's a negotiation to the scope of their patent rights.
Whoa. I never even thought about what that would look like. I guess if there's a pilot who's an inventor, should they reach out to you?
They can if they want. Yeah, certainly.
All right. We'll put your info in the show notes. So you've been an attorney for how long? 10 years? 20 years?
10 years.
10 years.
Just about 10 years.
What'd you do before that? Okay.
So before that, I was a Naval Aviator, primarily a 60 Bravo pilot. I flew off frigates, cruisers, and destroyers. I did
So those are the small ships, right?
That's right. And I did a full 20-year career. So that meant traveled around the country to different assignments.
Okay.
Really fortunate to have a bunch of different experiences along the way.
So you got out and then you went to law school?
My last 3 years in the Navy, I went to law school at night.
Whoa.
And then it's law school's 4 years. So my last year of law school, I was working part-time for a firm while I went to law school. Not necessarily at night at that point, because the type of work could have been done any time. So I took some day classes during that time.
Okay. And you have a family too, right?
I do. I have a wife and 3 kids. They're 29, 28, and 22.
Got it. So they were right in the thick of it in like middle school and high school when you were going through law school.
That's exactly right. And that was sort of one of the, primary drivers to going into the legal career, because I needed to find a career at the time that was going to support me funding them through college. And at the time, the aviation industry wasn't paying as well. This was back in 2012. And it was a lot harder for a primarily rotary wing aviator to get in, even into the regionals or other professional flying jobs. So I looked for another type of job that can help me support my family and support their education.
Yeah. Story time, kids. Just before 2015, it was nearly impossible for somebody that was not already a fixed wing aviator from the military, or somebody that had gone to, like, when they were young, knocked out their private pilot stuff and then lived with their parents to work at the regionals because they were paying, less than 20 grand a year. And so and after 20 years in the Navy, you're 42-ish.
Yeah.
And you've got 3 children and you've got a spouse and you've got to find a way to afford that. And you lived in San Diego, is that right?
At the time, yeah. That was my last duty station, was San Diego.
Yeah, which is super expensive.
Yeah.
So I dealt with the same thing. Yeah, the dream's over. It's like, yeah, I see right behind you, you've got the picture of the helicopter on the wall. I got the same one. It was behind me for 10 solid years, and it literally behind me and nothing else. So talk to me about, because a patent attorney, it's not an easy job. It takes a long time. It's a long tail on all these things. But at some point you started getting the itch to get flying again. What is the calculus to want to go back and do that? You're not a spring chicken anymore.
Right. So the crazy part, it all started from, my son was 20 at the time, and he was bugging me to go in on a gaming computer, half with him, right? And I said, I'm not a big gamer. I had a full-time job. I was busy. I said, well, if it ran Microsoft Flight Simulator, I'll consider it. And I start using the sim, and I'm like, I think I could do this, right? Now, it ended up being in his room, which kind of meant I got zero use out of it, because there was always some reason why he needed the computer for something. So I went down to the local flight club, +1, and I found an instructor. He ended up being an ex-Israeli F-16 pilot, really cool military background, and just started flying with him. And took only a couple flights, really shockingly, to get comfortable in the aircraft again. But the more I flew, the more I wanted to do. So
were you just kind of doing that for funsies? Were you like, I need to find an exit ramp?
It was just for fun. It was just, hey, I think I could do this, to let's see if I can actually do this. As I came back in, this is all, I hadn't flown anything at this point for 17 years. So that's a long time. And it had been 20 years since I'd flown fixed wing, because I had fixed wing time from test pilot school and then back to the fleet as a helicopter pilot. So I really hadn't flown fixed wing. So to get back in and got to that level, then I said, well, I don't want to be flying around without my instrument qual. So I found another ex-Navy test pilot in San Diego who was about 10 years senior to me, 10 years of classes senior to me. And then we redid my instrument currency, and again, kept doing more and more. I'd say, what else can I do?
So how did you find these cats?
Just basically Google search, but then I was kind of specific, maybe look for someone that had a similar background as I did, so they could see where I was coming from. So military background, or had that experience level, so we could speak the same language, so to speak.
Yeah. Also, for the prior military, these guys will give you a hard time too. And you're just used to taking a hard time. And so that's I think that to me, when I went through my fixed wing training with my mentor, Michael Phillips, he's a prior Marine. And that guy read me the riot act every single day. And he's like, you're better than this. You've got to keep working. It crushed me at the time. I mean, he's laughing right now because he's listening to this. And he just like kicked my ass every day. And I used to be an awesome pilot. And then I took 10 years off and I was awful. And it was so humbling and he just made me feel 2 inches tall. But, break you down to build you up. And that's, you can overcome anything. So I like that. I like that military instructor. If you can take the abuse, then do it. Yes, they're good dudes and good girls and all the things, but there's just this little bit of grit in there sometimes that is really helpful.
No, I definitely agree. And I definitely sought out not necessarily the easiest route. So I went and after I got flying again.
Are you flying like all the time or are you just flying a little bit?
No, just weekends. Really just weekends. Sometimes during the week, I have a somewhat flexible schedule, but that was one of the reasons I eventually got my CFI was because I found that there are not a lot of instructors that wanted to fly on the weekend. So I said, hey, this could be a side job to my legal career, but I kept flying more. I did my ATP, CTP in last October, and then I went and got my ATP practical knocked out in December. But all flying along the way, finding different instructors to basically get me instrument current and then start flying some multi-engine piston because I only had flown turboprops in the fleet. So before I did my ATP check ride, I wanted to get some time in that. And then even after that was done, I said, well, what can I do next? And basically went from there, and starting about January, I started working on my CFI airplane. So kind of going backwards, I already had an ATP, but I said, how can I really build some hours without laying it all out of pocket? So I went backwards and went through that whole process. And that was even more of a learning process. I found a great instructor, probably had 9,000 hours, all general aviation the hard way, right? Teaching. And probably, right, most people, I think most instructors might go in, they're doing to get their 1,500 hours and then roll to somewhere else, maybe a corporate job, maybe into the airlines. But this guy, this is what he did. Probably one of the best instructors I've ever had. And he really held you to the commercial standards and would not release you for any check rides until you were 100% ready, because that's a huge deal, right? You don't want to have any check ride failures on your record if you don't have to. So he made sure that I was ready, but squeezed every ounce of knowledge out of you and forced you to perform, but had that background that he could be able to do that.
Timothy P. Pope is a certified financial planner dedicated to guiding professional pilots through smart financial planning. Whether it's saving for retirement, investment management, a seamless military transition, or strategic tax planning, Tim is your trusted financial partner. Also, you can join Tim as he leads engaging discussions on personal finance and strategies for professional pilots on the brand new Pilot Money podcast. Timothy P. Pope, helping professional pilots make the most out of life. Yeah, and I think that's a really interesting point. You are working a full-time job and doing the flying on the weekends, and you're paying out of pocket.
Yep.
And you have this instructor that's holding you to this high level. And the one thing you benefit from, the people that are going through the flight schools that just kind of push you through real fast, the one thing you benefit from is, one of the things, I guess, is that instructor holding you to that high level and showing you, here's the bar and here's where you sit. And I'm not going to recommend this until you pass this level. And you're still paying your money and you're still doing your thing. And so it's a little bit less risk because you are paying extra money for extra flight time. As far as peace of mind, that's really awesome, right?
Oh, yeah. No, I knew when I was ready, when I had passed his sort of pseudo check ride and he said it was ready, I had the complete confidence to go into the check ride, which I just finished in July, to be able to knock it out of the park.
That's awesome. And so how is balancing family life, lawyer life, and flying life through flight school stuff while you were trying to bang this stuff out? How'd that go?
Well, I have a great support network. So it means you start off with a great spouse that supports your crazy activities, because on the weekends, this is what I'd be doing, right? I'd have to be taking time off to go to the airport. She probably wasn't she's been flying with me, but only since I've been married for almost 30 years. She's been with me since, pinned my gold wings on me in the Navy long time ago. And she'll be there to pin my wings on when I start with a major in a couple weeks. And that support allowed me to keep going, right? And I'm sure a lot of people would say, hey, you're crazy. Why would you go from this great job back into this to start from the beginning? But I really think it's, if you follow your passions, and that really keeps that sense of excitement and newness, makes you really motivated to continue. And I think it makes you feel great to be alive. It's a great time.
Yeah. So do you work for a firm or do you work independently?
I work for a firm, a large, probably 700 attorney firm, 26 offices. They have an office in San Diego. Okay.
How's the conversation been about, hey guys, I'm heading out to fly airplanes?
It's kind of odd in the field. I don't have any defined hours, meaning I don't have a defined work schedule, like have to be in the office, be gone by 5. It's weird. You work on a yearly basis, you have to bill a certain number of hours. So there comes in some flexibility that if I take 2 hours on a Wednesday morning to go flying, then maybe I'm going to be spending 2 hours extra on Friday afternoon or Saturday morning working on stuff. And the legal work is always happening. So there's always more work to be done. So as long as you're meeting your requirements for the firm, and that means meeting the requirements for the clients, they were fine with it.
Cool. So you've done a lot. How long has it taken since you decided to get that Microsoft Simulator computer with your little buddy?
So I probably started that January of 22 until October 23. So it'll be almost 2 years. I'll start in doc November 1st. So
okay, that's a long haul to crank out hours because I'm sure you already had your 1,500 hours.
I did.
You could have knocked a couple things out real quick, but you slow and steady wins the race. And I love that. And I think that's a good testament for a lot of people that are thinking about how to thread the needle of a second career, right? So now you just alluded to INDOC. What's coming up next?
So I'll start INDOC with American Airlines here on November 1st.
So you're jumping right to American. You're not flying for a regional right now. You're not doing anything. You are just jumping into American.
That's right. It's a complete miracle. I feel very fortunate.
Yeah, 1,000% fortunate. That's amazing. What does your time look like right now? How do you break down your fixed wing and your helicopter and all the things? What do you have?
So I've got 2614 total, right about 2034 rotary wings. So you're probably around 600. I've only have about 100 hours multi-engine.
Okay.
About 251 fixed wing turbine.
Including T-34 and test pilot school stuff?
So when I was waiting from flight school to go to the fleet replacement squadron, so that follow-on training, I had a little bit of time. There was a lot of delays, and I think there's a lot of delays now again too. So there was an opportunity to go flying with the fixed wing instructor training unit over at Trade Wing 5 in Pensacola. So here you are, a helo guy. You get to go back and fly T-34s again. You would get your NATOPS check and then go flying. And a lot of it was support missions. So you get to take an airplane up to, they would actually strip the paint off the planes up in Alabama. And you would fly a T-34 up with paint on it. And you would fly back this silver beast with completely bare back to Whiting. And you got to do some of that. Some of it was the runway duty officer pickups. You would go out to the fields and pick people up after doing RDO duty. And it was probably some of the most fun flying that you could have. And it was totally lucked into it. I saw a friend of mine that had graduated flight school a couple weeks sooner. I saw him out on base and he had a crazy patch on. I'm like, where are you? And he's like, I'm at the FITU and flying T-34s. And I'm like, I went on that. So I got some fixed wing turbine time from that. I mean, didn't know it'd be useful. And then I was fortunate enough to get selected for test pilot school. And as a rotary wing aviator, the Army sends its test pilot candidates to Navy's test pilot school because they don't have their own school. And as part of that agreement, they run a combined fixed and rotary wing syllabus. It's just called rotary wing, but you fly both fixed and rotary wing aircraft at test pilot school because the Army wants its test pilots to be both fixed wing and rotary wing certified. So the Navy runs this combined school. So prior to going to test pilot school, they had sent me down to Corpus to go through VT-35. I think it just stood up at that time. You get a King Air type rating out of it. So about 40 hours. I flew a bunch of, if you look at my different type model series, it's almost crazy, 5 hours in a Learjet, 5 hours in a P3. So a lot of the fixed wing turbine is just different aircraft that add up. But, that's generally one of the harder things to get. But I think more and more I'm seeing that a lot of the employers are constantly lowering those numbers to put it into the realm where if you can get some of that flight time, that makes that next step a possibility.
Yeah, things are a lot more in reach right now. And the reason is because it's not that they're lowering standards, it's that the opportunity to, there's a need to hire a certain amount of pilots. And if you keep the numbers up very high the entire time, you're burned through them very, very quickly. And then you've got nothing left. So you've got to figure out this way to make that balance. As you were deciding to go to a major, what was your inspiration? How did you make that decision that I'm kind of done being a lawyer for now?
It wasn't all at once. So it was the more I flew, really, I decided I really liked, I liked the training to get to be a lawyer. I like the work sometimes, but I really decided that I wanted the adventure. And it's hard to capture that. We're discussing them in my home office. I've been working completely from home since basically the pandemic, which has been great for flexibility, but really you kind of lose that get out and do it. So the more I flew, the more I said, I really want to, for me, I call it the rocking chair test, that I want to look back and say, one day if I'm sitting in a rocking chair and saying, what did I do that I had this awesome opportunity later on in life? What did I want to, go for it? There's risk in everything we do, but basically put it on the line and kind of take that leap of faith into this next career. Now, why the majors? I think several reasons. The first is the training is just, I think everything I've heard, the training at American is second to none. They really take the time making sure you're ready to go. Not that other flying jobs, the training would be bad. I think a lot of it is there's a pressure to get people into the cockpit and start making money. And I think that, there may not be as much of an opportunity, for getting extra sims or something else if you need training along the way. And I have a lot to learn. I haven't flown 121 ops. So just talking with some of the people in my class, I'm just in awe of their experiences. They're regional pilot check airmen. They're, infinitely more current and qualified. So I really need to lean on them to gain those skills that they built up, the hard way. And I really have a lot of respect for that.
Yeah. It's funny. There's a couple, you'll find yourself, from my experience, you'll find yourself first having to learn the plane and what's it doing now and how does this autopilot functionality work, whether it's an LNAV, VNAV, or whether it's an Airbus or a Boeing or whatever. How do I command it to do the things properly? And you kind of crank through that in simulators and you get to this point where you're like, okay, I get, please God, let me pass this check ride. And then you pass it and you're like, I still am like I'm not amazing at it, but I'm hopeful to continue to learn. And then you start on the line with that basic idea of what you're doing. And then the 121 ops part, that is probably one of the biggest, steepest learning curves, is being able to talk on the radios and being able to think about, if you're in DFW and you've got to call ramp for a push, and then you've got to, are you going to talk to ramp to taxi, or are you talking, does ramp push you over to ground? Do you call ground? Do you just sit there and wait to be called at a spot? And then all of a sudden you go to Chicago, and there's another organization called metering. And there's a lot of different types of communication. Once you get in the air, good to go. But on the ground, taxiing around, man, it's amazing how complex it is. So anyway, it's going to be great. And you're going to be fine, and it'll be great.
I hope so.
But I see that. You will. Okay, so how did you decide to just build the app? Like, where'd you learn all that stuff about getting an application and preparing for the interview? And because it's a lot to come from, I'm a lawyer, to I'm going to a major.
So a lot of it was networking, building a network and reaching out to people. And I got to say, I'm just in awe of the number of people that I reached out to. And I reached out to you and talked to people and say, hey, this is where I am. Do you have any advice? And the number of people willing to give me their time to really point me in the direction I need to go. This is what you need to do. I have colleagues that are in the regionals. I have networked and found someone similar flight time that finishing up training an American. I reached out to them, and basically they're willing to take the time and show me the way. And so that was a lot of it. Really the starting was to, I use Anytime logbooks to get my logbooks in order and get that squared away.
Stuff will beam.
Yeah. Shout out to him. Great job in taking a civilian logbook from the beginning, my Navy military logbooks, and then a civilian logbook after that, to sort of put it all together into a package that the airline could read and no problem, to get through. So then I used Spitfire Elite to get trained up and ready. Wasn't sure if I needed it, but boy, did I benefit from going through the training. And shout out to them and their team and their patience. And even you get so much just listening to other people's answers, even when it wasn't sort of your turn to go, that you could say, I never really thought about it. That's great. And to figure out a way to present the answers in a way that leads to success.
Yeah, that's impactful, right? Did you have a notebook? Did you keep notes on stuff?
Oh, yeah. It was all digitally kept, but basically it'd have the questions. And then I had small cues to remember this story. This was the story I'll use for this scenario. Or did you have trouble fly with a difficult person? I have the story. You just have one thing. And it was just your cue to remember it. I took down the questions just to make sure and say, if this came up, how would I answer it? Or what are the things I think of?
Hey, pilot. Does your pilot uniform make a short flight feel like a transcon slog? Flight Uniforms have reinvented aviation shirts with 3D stretch, stain repellents, and no wrinkles. These shirts are just plain comfortable and ready for takeoff right out of your rollerboard. Flight Uniform is trusted by more than 25,000 pilots, and their flagship flight shirt has over 1,500 five-star reviews. I've worn every pilot shirt out there, and if you know me, you know I only wear Flight Uniforms. Be the envy of every cockpit at flightuniform.com and get a special podcast exclusive discount with the code SpitfirePod20 to take 20% off your first order. That's SpitfirePod20, all one word, for 20% off your first order at flightuniform.com. Yeah. And that's so important. I love that. And just being able to, this is a program we at Spitfire created it to help pilots understand themselves better and understand what people are looking for and what people want to hear. Not to change something that's not true, but to make sure that as you communicate, you do it in a way which gives the most impact to the person that's receiving that communication. And I mean, you're a lawyer. Your job is to be articulate. Your job is to communicate. And it means a lot that you say that you got a lot out of that. So thank you for that.
Oh, no. And I had been through probably to get to a law job, I probably had 50, 60 interviews. So a law firm job, especially at a big firm, you might have 9 different interviews that you go through to even get to that point. Now, some of them, not many of them are technical, so to speak. They don't pick a law book and pick a section out and say, tell me about this. They might ask about your experiences. I think some of the same, there's no flight deck in law, right? So it's not, can I stand to be with this someone for many hours in the flight deck or on a trip? But some of the same factors, because we work long hours, and some of it is this some person that I could, stand to work with or communicate well with, or that when the going gets tough, that they're going to be there and contribute to the team and to the client. And that's really what I think, at least in law, that when I've interviewed people for positions, what the firm is looking for. And we have the paper. A lot of times in law, people don't come in with, a lot of times it's they went to undergraduate and then they go to law school and that's it. Maybe they had a part-time job. So it's hard to look at that work ethic. And I think for the most part, for the majors, you'll have that work ethic because most people have had, maybe they have a flight instructing job, maybe they had a banner towing job, maybe they had almost everyone had a job between that where they're applying the skills that they learned along the way. Now, maybe a lot of them didn't have a 20-year Navy job and a 10-year law job prior to their coming into a major airline. But a lot of it is trying to look at someone's judgment, their thought process, and the way you can explain that you're thinking and your decision making in a way that's logical, makes sense, meets the customer's needs, is something that helps you to be successful. And Spitfire does help you package that up in a clear and concise way and clean off the edges in a way that they can understand in the short time that you have for the interviews.
The team at American asked you a couple things. Did they ask you about being a lawyer? And did they ask you about, hey, your second career, why do you think you'd be good at this? Why do you think you should just jump right into a major? So
the first one, yes. So I had 2 very senior line check airmen for wide bodies that came out to get me. I did it at RTAG, and I had an interview already scheduled for October 18th, and I was looking to get it moved up, right? And so I had a meet and greet on Saturday. I did the meet and greet, went fine, but I thought it was sort of done because you get the feeling after the first interview that I was thinking, okay, was have a nice rest of the conference, left there, was trying to meet other people at the conference, and phone rang around 3:00, and you come down to the American desk and, hey, you want to finish off your interview this weekend? Certainly did, right? Certainly did at that point to sort of move ahead in the process. So I finished the HR portion that afternoon and then interviewed on Sunday. And so they collect all your logbooks, all your paperwork, and I'm sitting there waiting to go in. And the two pilots come out, and they started with, I think they were joking. They were saying, one person here, they had a ice skating scholarship, and they were kind of joking around. Who is it? Who had that ice skating scholarship? And then one of them says, yeah, but one of them here is a lawyer. And then they called me up to go on in. And it really did. And it came up in the fact that they felt that the pilots could really use at least some of my skill set as an attorney to help out the rest of the pilots in whether it's contract negotiations or some of that. So that skill set would still be useful, right? Still going to have to learn a lot to learn how to fly for a major airline. But they didn't really, I expressed it as, I enjoyed being a lawyer, but it was like looking for that adventure. So it really never came up like, why do you want to leave the law? I think they both live this adventurous lifestyle, and they sort of, you get it. even the lawyers that I've had to give notice already, so that know what I'm going to do, they basically say, that's what an opportunity, to go do something that you're passionate about.
Yeah. I can't imagine. I can't imagine being a lifelong lawyer and having no attachment whatsoever to aviation. And all of a sudden you get a phone call from one of your employees, one of your colleagues, and they're like, "Hey man, I'm giving my 2 weeks notice." And you just think, "Oh man, you're leaving us. What firm are you going to?" He's like, "I'm going to American Airlines to go fly." You're like, "What?" Like, I can imagine like hearing the tires squeal as the brakes are jammed. Like, what is this guy talking about?
Yeah.
Was that amazing?
Yeah, it was amazing. I mean, a lot of them knew I was a former naval aviator. And some of them I worked with many different partners, knew that I had this passion for flying. And, I worked with clients that had, sometimes had a focus in aviation, not all the time. It doesn't always line up that you're doing stuff around maybe your strengths from your past experience. But it really was, I think, people were really supportive and, hey, go live that adventure.
Yeah. And that's what it is, man. It's an adventure. It's going to be high. There's going to be highs and lows, and there's going to be days where you're on top of your game, and there's going to be days where you struggle. There's going to be days where you get your butt kicked by weather or something to that nature. But just remember, like, it's all part of it. It all comes and it all goes. And it just is, it's exciting. It's hard. It requires a lot from you. Like, the studying is heavy, and it doesn't quit. It's just like anything else, right? Everybody that doesn't fly, for the most part, has a job where they can just kind of hang it up at the end of the day. And this job is one that is constantly challenging. You always have to be like educating yourself, and things are always changing. And so that's what we're getting into. And that's a good thing. So what advice would you have for a person that's listening to this show that is a lawyer and works in a sock factory or whatever, and it just wants to fly and sees this opportunity? What would you tell them?
I would say the first thing, if you want to do this professionally, and I guess maybe this is not the first thing, but is find out if you're qualified to do it, right? So, you have to be able to get a class 1. So if you want to, at least fly for a major, get your class 1 done early, even if you don't need a class 1 to start flying, right? But at least that gives you your first indication, like, this is a possibility, right? You don't want to get your class 3 and find out or something like that just to start flying. I mean, and then to find out later on that you're not qualified for this. So find out if you're qualified, you're in good enough health to start. Then find a great mentor or mentors. And there are a lot of people in this, there's many different networks that you can lean on. And I have yet to call up anyone and say, "Hey, can you give me a few minutes of your time?" that's not willing to bend over backward to give you some time and point you in the right direction, because that's the best way to figure it out. And I hope to be able to do that going forward in the future and, pay that back to people who are coming behind me. And then find some place that could get you through where you need to be flying wise. It might be get you prepped up for exams, that you'll need to take, to get the qualifications that you need. But it's not impossible. I took, in addition to the ATP written exam, I took the MilComp CFI practical exam, the CFI exam, the CFII exam, all in this series of a little under a year. It's a lot of prep, but I think it all builds on each other, right? There's stuff that the more you get into it, you're going to say, okay, I'm going to use this little piece in the next portion.
Yeah, that's so good. And it's incremental, right? It's one step at a time. You don't have to eat the elephant all at once. And so that persistence and the ability to reach out, find the next person that can help you take that next step. It keeps your inertia going. I'm constantly talking about inertia and getting yourself moving forward. And I love that you've done that while balancing a professional career, while balancing family and all of the things that have to do it. Plus, you live in San Diego, so the weather is always nice and you can always go flying. That's awesome.
Yeah, and the technology that had changed for general aviation. I flew prior to flight school many years ago, and got my private license in Rensselaer County Airport, a small field in upstate New York. Then got my instrument while I was waiting for flight school down in the Pensacola Navy Regional Flying Club when it was there years ago. But the technology coming back to general aviation is amazing. I mean, I've flown, Cessna 172s with G1000, equipped cockpits and what you can do with ForeFlight or some of the other electronic tools for general aviation. It amazes you that maybe some of the aspects that people of my vintage remember, like, hey, I was planning a flight plan and I had to, break out the charts and I had to, do the nav log manually and then do, your fuel log and all these things and then call 1-800 weather brief and wait on hold for like hours and hours. And that's what people might remember and go, I don't want to go back to that. I'm telling you, it is so much easier. And it's amazing the access to information, how it's organized. I mean, I have all my pubs right on my iPad for, that you can reference. How well structured the CFI programs are now that, in going through to be a CFI to develop a structured programs. When I was learning to fly, you'd show up at the airport and you didn't know what you were going to learn that day. It was like, I don't remember having like FA books that were specifically to guide you through the different maneuvers. It was all kind of like, it was like folklore. It was kind of amazing. And the way it's restructured now, it really is. It tells you what you need to do. And that's where I think in some ways it's very like the structure of military training programs. And I think why a lot of carriers like hiring from military aviators, because the very structured, detailed programs that those aviators have gone through, that they know what kind of product they're getting, right?
Yeah, for sure, man. And that's right. I think that the advances in technology and the way that aviation, especially in the training world, has taken advantage of that is really impactful and really, just puts it there for you to consume. And it doesn't make it easy, but it makes it more logical and it makes it easier for you to understand where to find that information. And so do that and take advantage of it. Don't be afraid. Just dive in because you can do it. You can do hard things. So Jim, you're awesome, man. Thanks for spending time with us. Thanks for just all this great information, because there are so many people that are looking to do exactly what you're doing. And I think you're an inspiration to them. So I appreciate you spending your time with me, and thanks for pouring out all this information for the pilot.
Thanks for your time today. I really enjoyed being out with you. Again, I love your podcast. Keep it up and look forward to seeing you out online.
That's it, man. We did it. All right, pilots, that's a wrap on this episode. And I know what you're thinking. You need to make yourself a little bit better. So how do you make yourself a little bit better? You tighten up your resume. So here's what I want you to do. Go over to my website, spitfireelite.com/podcast, and you can download my free resume template. It is literally my resume that you can download and you can put your own skill sets in. It is tight, it is organized, and it's the perfect pilot resume. It's just something I like to do for the pilot group, and it is free to you. So go over there, spitfireelite.com/podcast, and download your free resume template. While you're over there, look at all the services that we offer. Lots of great interview prep, lots of great application review. Everything you need to be a professional pilot is right there at my website, spitfireelite.com/podcast. Thanks, and I'll see you on the next episode.